1 Samuel chapter 6, let's just break into it again, read a few verses, and we'll finish it today. 1 Samuel chapter 6, it says, "Now the ark of the Lord," this is the ark of the covenant, the holy acacia box that's covered with gold. "The ark of the Lord had been in the country of the Philistines for 7 months." The Philistines are Gentiles. They're not Jews. They're Gentiles. They are non-Yahweh worshipers. They do not worship our God. They worship the false god. They have a bunch of false gods, but the one that has been brought up here is the god Dagon, this fish god, and that's who the Philistines are. The ark was in Philistia, in the land of the Philistines, for 7 months. Verse 2 says, "And the Philistines called for the priests and the diviners, and they said, 'What shall we do with the ark of Yahweh? Tell us how we shall send it to its place.'" We need to get rid of this ark. It's killing our people. We have hemorrhoids. We have other mid-body sores all over them. Very, very personal attack God brought on these people. He brought this deep fear on them, this confusion, and they want the ark and Yahweh out of their land. So they went to ask the religious people, how do we send it away and appease this God? And they said, so here are the spiritual leaders, the priests, they said, if you send away the ark of the God of Israel, do not send it empty, but you shall surely return to him, to the God of Israel, a guilt offering, and then you will be healed, and it will be known to you why his hand is not removed from you. Until you send the ark back, he will continue this plague on your people. In verse 4, they said, what shall the guilt offering be? So you've got the group of the Philistines, and they're talking to this group of priests, and this is a conversation back and forth. The priests said, yes, send the ark back, but don't send it alone. Now the people respond, okay, you say don't send it alone. What shall we send with it? What's your, give us your interpretation of this, your feedback here. What shall be the guilt offering which we shall return to their God Yahweh? And now the priests speak. And they said 5 golden tumors and 5 golden mice, according to the number of the lords of the Philistines, for one plague was on all of you and on your lords. And verse 5 says, so you shall make likenesses of your tumors. So they're going to make these little golden hemorrhoids. It's a bizarre story. These little golden tumors, you shall make likenesses of your tumors and likenesses of your mice that ravage the land. And you shall give glory to the God of Israel. This is Yahweh. Perhaps by doing this, perhaps by chance, maybe you can appease him. Get his wrath to stop. Perhaps he will ease his hand from you, from your gods, and from your land. In verse 6, the priests continue, as if to say, people, you need to do this and you need to do it now. He says, then why then do you harden your hearts as the Egyptians and Pharaoh hardened their hearts? They know Jewish history. They know about the plagues. The Philistines know Jewish history, and they know about the 10 plagues that God brought on Egypt. And it says, why are you hardening your hearts as the Egyptians and even their Pharaoh hardened their hearts? When he, Yahweh, had severely dealt with them, did they not allow the people to go, and they departed? The problem with this is that these priests completely miss the point of the 10 plagues in Egypt. Remember the 10 plagues in Egypt, every one of those plagues, the gnats, the frogs, the lice, the locusts, the blood, the darkness, the death of the firstborn, every one of those plagues was a direct attack on a false god of Egypt. Egypt worshiped a god of the frogs. Egypt worshiped a god of the this, a god of dark. They worshiped the sun. That's why God brought the darkness. They worshiped their god Ra, their false god Ra, the god of the sun. That's why the darkness. Every one of those 10 plagues is attached to the belief in a false god and what that god controlled. And so here you've got Yahweh in the Philistine territory in Philistia, and he has shown his power over their false god Dagon. Remember, he fell down one day, they prop him back up. The next day he falls down, his head is gone, his authority, his hands are cut off, his power. God is showing them, just like he showed the Egyptians in the 10 plagues, I alone am God. But the Philistines here and their priests completely missed the point of the 10 plagues. The only point they see is that God was heavy against the Egyptians, and they sent him away and everything was better in Egypt. That's all they're seeing here. They're totally missing the point that Yahweh is God and wants, just like he wanted the Egyptians to bow down and worship him, he wants the Philistines to bow down and worship him. But all the religious leaders can think about is get him out of your land and it will be better. What they should be thinking is fall down and worship him and it will be eternally better. But they don't get the point. So they continue in verse 7. They say, now therefore take. This is their idea of how to get the ark gone. Remember, they were asked the question, how shall we send it to its place? They are answering that with 5 golden tumors, with 5 golden mice, and this is how you shall get it back. It says, take and prepare a new cart, so make a wooden cart, and take 2 milk cows that are feeding their young, that are in milk, and take 2 milk cows on which there has never been a yoke. So take 2 cows that have never worked, not only not worked together, they've never worked at all. They are milk cows. And take those 2 milk cows and put a yoke on them and hitch the cows to the cart and take their calves home. So they just keep on making it more impossible for this to occur. Take the calves away from them. We talked about last time how the ark was to be carried. Without belaboring this, I'll tell you that the sons of Levi from the family of Kohath, they were the only men they were supposed to carry the ark of the covenant, the menorah, the lampstand, the table of showbread, the altar of incense. Only the people, only this particular family, the family of Kohath, were to move the Ark of the Covenant. But when Israel moved the Ark, they were supposed to move it covered so that no one could touch it and no one could see it. This is the way, and I showed you last week, I showed you some verses. It says in Numbers 4:6, and they shall lay a covering of porpoise skin on it, and shall spread over it a cloth of pure blue, and shall insert its poles. The ark itself, the box, was never to be touched. In Numbers 4:15, later on, a few verses after that, it says, when Aaron and his sons have finished covering the holy objects, so only the high priest and his family could go in and look upon these objects, but only to cover them. When Aaron the high priest and his sons have finished covering the holy objects and all the furnishings of the sanctuary, when the camp is to set out, after that the sons of Kohath shall come to carry them. Only one family could carry these things. God's very particular at how he expects to be worshipped, so that they will not touch the holy objects and die. These are the things in the tent of meeting which the sons of Kohath are to carry. I just told you what they are. So the Philistines are going to move the ark. They're not Jews. They're certainly not sons of Kohath. They're not even Jews. They cannot touch the ark or look on the ark. If they were Jews and they did this, they would die. But what we'll see here is that these Philistines, these Gentiles, have decided we'll move the ark in a certain way. They don't know any better. They don't know the Mosaic Law. They know some Jewish history, but they don't know the depths of the Mosaic Law and exactly how this thing was to be moved. So they would build a new cart. They would take 2 cows that were in milk. Notice again how full the udders are on this cow. They would take 2 cows. They would yoke them together. These are non-working cows, but they would put a yoke on them. It takes a long time to get 2 ox to move together. This was all a miraculous event. And not only would they do that, they would take their calves away. And what nursing female animal would leave her calves? None of them would. And so if these cows could work together, yoke together, and pull this cart, and if they went out of Philistia and straight into the promised land, into a Jewish city, then the Philistines would accept that Yahweh was in control of all these things. This is, again, kind of rubbing a rabbit's foot. If it happens exactly like this, then Yahweh is a God. So Yahweh is going to give them some leeway. It's grace. It's undeserved favor. Yahweh, as we'll see here in just a minute, when this Ark of the Covenant gets back into Jewish territory, when the Jews touch that Ark, 50,000 of them will die. The Philistines touched that ark because somebody had to pick it up and put it on the cart. But God didn't kill those people. God didn't kill the Philistines on this day for this. They don't know better. But the Levites in the town where that ark will go should know better, the priests. And they touch the ark, and many of them will die. So you'll see two different things, and you might ask the question, why is God nice to the Philistines and he lets them handle it? There are no Jews there holding it by the poles, carrying it. It's not covered with blue, but God is allowing this. It's all grace. It's all undeserved grace to the Philistines and undeserved grace to the Jews that he brings their ark back into the land for them. Verse 8, look what it says here. Take the ark of the Lord and place it on the cart. Lift it up and put it on the cart. And put the articles of gold which you return to him as a guilt offering. These are the mice and the tumors. Put them in a box by its side. You can see the box there, the smaller box on the cart. It's a great artist rendition there. And then send it away that it may go. So that's what the priests have decided they needed to do. Build the ark, put the cows, remove the calves, put the ark on the cart, put the little golden box with its tumors and its mice beside it, and see what it'll do. See what it'll do. See where it goes. See if the cows will leave, if there is a God that controls things, just see what it will do. In verse 9 they say, watch it. Watch. If it goes by the way of its own territory to Beth Shemesh, which is a city in Israel, if it goes to the promised land, if these cows leave their calves, work together, and pull this cart, and the ark goes into the promised land, then Yahweh, it says, then he has done us this great evil. It was Yahweh. But stubborn men holding out a little bit of hope. But if not, if the cows don't go into the promised land, if they just wander around aimlessly or wander around trying to find their calves, then we will know that it is not his hand, that this God of the Hebrews, Yahweh, had nothing to do with us. It was not him that struck us. It happened to us by chance. So the priests are saying, don't just let the cows go, but you go and observe where they travel. You watch them, and if they go straight to Beth Shemesh, the nearest city across the border, if you follow them there and see them go there, then it is verified Yahweh, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, the Jewish God, did this to us. The Jewish God is greater than our God Dagon. The Jewish God is the one who brought the hemorrhoids. The Jewish God is the one who brought this madness upon us. It was the Jewish God doing all these things. But if these cows can't make it back, it wasn't the Jewish God. And that's why they stack the deck against the Jewish God. That's why they get two cows that certainly wouldn't leave their calves. That's why they get two cows that have never worked, much less worked together, and put them at the front. Because there's no way this can occur. But as we see, that's exactly what happens. The cows go straight back into the promised land. We'll see that in just a minute and see how Israel responds. It would prove here then, I don't want you to miss this point, it would prove whether Yahweh, the God of Israel, was in control of the events that happened in Philistia, or not? Is their God stronger than our God? That's what's at stake. When Dagon fell down in his temple, was it because he was in the presence of a mightier, more authoritative God, or was it all by chance? And what do you think they want to be the truth? They want it to be all by chance. Has nothing to do with their God, the one true God. That's what they're hoping for by stacking the deck against the God of Israel here. They're about to find out that God's creatures worship him. The men of Ekron liked this plan, so they put it into action. Look what it says in verse 10. The men did so. They liked the plan that the priests put forward. They did it. The men did so. They took 2 milk cows, they hitched them to the cart, and they shut up their calves at home. They put the ark of the Lord on the cart and the box with the golden mice and the likeness of their tumors. And the question has to be now, the stage is set, who's in control? Where do the cows go? What do these 2 cows do? Where do the cows go? The question is, who controls the cows? Who does control the cows? Are the cows controlled? Or are the cows completely at their own free will to do whatever they want? Is there a God that controls the cows? The other question is, who will worship the Creator even when stubborn humans won't? His creation will. If humans won't worship God, His creation still, the rest of His creation still will. It reminds me of this story. You know this story. Look at what it says in Numbers 22. Tell me who was riding on the donkey. In Numbers 22, verse 32, look at what God controls. The angel of the Lord said to him, who's he talking to? Why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, so we have the angel of the Lord, God. We have a donkey, God's creation, and we have a human being, another part of God's creation. Who's worshiping God here? The donkey or the man? It says, the angel of the Lord said to him, why have you struck your donkey these 3 times? Behold, I have come out as an adversary because your way, Balaam, was contrary to me. But the donkey saw me, and the donkey turned aside from me these 3 times. Remember at the burning bush what the very first thing God, the angel of the Lord in the bush, told Moses? What did God tell Moses when Moses approached the presence of the living God? What did he tell him? Take off your sandals because the ground on which you walk is holy ground. God is present. Take off your sandals. What does the animal do? The animal recognizes the holiness of the ground. And the animal stops and won't approach. And God tells Balaam, if this donkey would not have stopped, the donkey that you're beating, if the donkey wouldn't have stopped, I would have killed you already today. You can thank the donkey for worshiping his Creator. The donkey saw me, and he turned aside from me these 3 times. If she had not turned aside from me, I would surely have killed you just now and let her live. The one that worships me and the one that is contrary to me and not worshiping me properly. Reminds me of one more story I'll share with you in the book of Jonah, chapter 1, verse 17. Who controls everything that He created? God does. Look what it says in this verse. The Lord appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah. Was that an accident? Or was this an appointment by the hand of God, an appointment that Jonah would keep and one that the fish kept? The Lord God, Yahweh, appointed a great fish to swallow Jonah, and Jonah was in the stomach of the fish 3 days and 3 nights. Is this a true story? No, I'm asking you, did God ever create a great fish big enough to swallow a man, to put him into a cavity in his stomach and keep him alive for 3 days? Is that a true story? You know who else believed it was a true story? Jesus did. Because Jesus said, this evil and adulterous generation always seeks for a sign. But the only sign you're going to get is the sign of Jonah. And as Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days and 3 nights, so will the Son of Man be in the heart of the earth for 3 days and 3 nights. Jesus, your Savior, believed that the story of Jonah was exactly as it's portrayed in the Bible, that Jonah was swallowed by a great fish. A lot of people look at these miraculous things and say, oh, that didn't happen. That's just God trying to say, and they allegorize and spiritualize and say it's not literal. A big fish did not swallow a human being. That's not true. But yet when Jesus says it, you have to stop and wonder and realize, it must be true. Jesus mentions Noah and the universal flood. Jesus mentions Jonah and the big fish. Jesus mentions all these great Old Testament things that some men say, that just could not have happened. You need to line up with your Savior there. Jonah was appointed to be swallowed by a fish because the fish obeyed his God. And not only was Jonah kept in the fish, but remember, Jonah was on a boat that was going away from Nineveh. He was in the Mediterranean Sea traveling west, trying to get away from where God wanted him to go to Nineveh. God has him swallowed by the fish. The fish turns around, goes back to the shores, and it says, then the Lord commanded the fish, and it vomited Jonah up onto the dry land. It delivered him up onto the land. I would love to see that. I hope in heaven that somehow we get to watch some of these stories on video. This would be a fantastic thing to watch. The story of Jonah. Who controls his creation? God does. And so here these Philistines are trying like crazy to discredit Yahweh, the God of Israel. They're stacking the deck against him, making it almost impossible for these particular 2 cows to carry that Ark of the Covenant into Israel. Yet those cows, in perfect obedience to their God, just like the fish was turned around and swam back to where it was coming from, these cows do exactly what God would have them do. Look what it says in verse 12. And the cows took the straight way in the direction of Beit Shemesh. Like there was a compass in them, like a course was set on a GPS, and God said, go. And that's exactly what they did. The cows took the straight way in the direction of Beit Shemesh. They went along the highway, lowing as they went. I'd love to know what that was. The lowing, the joy, the rejoicing. Did not turn aside. They did not turn aside to the right or to the left. They took the straightest path they could. The land of the Philistine, or the lords of the Philistines, followed them to the border of Beit Shemesh. Remember, the priest said, you need to go. Watch what the cows do so we can determine whether their God Yahweh has any power, or maybe it was all by chance. Please, Dagon, let it be all by chance. And so they take a path into the city of Beit Shemesh, which is a Jewish city. So now the characters are going to change. The characters are going to change from these Philistine, Gentile, non-Yahweh worshipers to Jews. The ark is about to be given back to the Jews. And so we have to see how the Jews deal with the presence of the living God and his ark. This is going to show you this map right here. The small red box, this is the land of Israel, the promised land. We call it the promised land because God promised to give this land to Abraham forever, to Abraham and his seed, the Jews. It's called Israel today, the promised land. It's called the land of Canaan. It's called by various names, but this red box is what's represented in this big map. And you can see there, this whole war started. And the ark got captured when the Philistine army and the Israeli army came into battle, the battle of Aphek. You see Aphek right here. And the ark was captured because the Philistines won the battle. And the very first place they took the ark, as we've seen in the last chapter, was the city of Ashdod. And there the people, these tumors, these hemorrhoids fell on the people. They said, Yahweh must not like our city. Let's just move him to a different city. And so they moved the Ark of the Covenant down to Gat, this city here. The tumors followed. There was a great madness that came on these people also. So they decided to move the city to Ekron. The people of Ekron said, hey, we know what's going on with this ark. We don't want it here. And they immediately go to the priests and say, we need to send this thing out of the land. And so what we see here in the red is the ark coming back into Israeli territory, into the land of Canaan that Israel occupied, that they controlled. And now what does it say in verse 13? The people of Beit Shemesh, these are Jews. These are Jews, worshipers of Yahweh. The people of Beit Shemesh were reaping their wheat harvest in the valley, and they raised their eyes and saw the ark and were glad to see it. And I bet they were. I'll give you a couple of facts about the city of Beit Shemesh. Remember back in the book of Joshua when Joshua was apportioning the land to Israel, this land, it was under Joshua that they decided which area Manasseh would get, or which area Asher would get, or Naphtali. These colors that you see were determined by God through Joshua. These are the apportionments. This is the area that Judah got. This is the area that Simeon got. This is the tribal area that Reuben got. But what about the Levites? The third son of Jacob, Levi, which is a brother to all these names you see, Asher, Naphtali, Manasseh, Dan, Ephraim, Judah, Simeon. He was their brother, but you don't see the name Levite there. He didn't get a portion. What Levi got was the priesthood. Levi would be the eternal priests of God, the mediators between the Jews and their God Yahweh. And God said, disperse the Levites throughout the land, give them cities. And one of the cities that the Levites got was a town called Beit Shemesh. Look what the Bible says in Joshua chapter 21. See, it's not only, there's no mistake that the milk cows went to this particular city. This is a city of Levites. This is a city of priests. This is a city that should know the significance of the Ark of the Covenant and how to treat it. They should know the law of Moses. In Joshua 21, concerning this city, it says, now the sons of Israel gave by lot to the Levites these cities with their pasture lands, as the Lord had commanded through Moses. They gave these cities, which are here mentioned by name, from the tribe of the sons of Judah and from the tribes of the sons of Simeon. Now remember where the tribes are. Judah and Simeon are down here in the south. And one of these cities, Beit Shemesh, fits right in there in the south. Look what it says, same chapter, a couple of verses down. And Ain with its pasture lands, Utah with its pasture lands. And here's our city. And Beit Shemesh with its pasture lands. 9 cities from these two tribes. Beit Shemesh was given to the priests, the Levites. This is their town. So it's no surprising that Beit Shemesh is where God had the Ark of the Covenant go back into Jerusalem or into Israel. Consider what's going on in Israel for just a minute again. The spiritual shambles that Israel is in. Consider what's going on in Israel over the past 7 months while the Ark of the Covenant has been gone from Jewish land. The ark was taken out of the tabernacle by the sons of the high priest, Hophni and Phinehas. The city where the tabernacle was, the city of Shiloh, has been at least partially destroyed by the Philistines. The tabernacle probably no longer stands there. I'll show you that in a minute. The high priest of Israel is now dead. Remember when Eli heard that his sons had been killed and that the ark had been taken, he fell back on his stool, he hit his head, he broke his neck, and he died. So the high priest of Israel is gone. There is no named high priest of Israel right now. Israel is in spiritual shambles. And all of a sudden, while messing with their wheat field, harvesting their wheat in a valley, they see 2 cows pulling a wooden cart with the Ark of God coming back into Israel. Imagine the joy, the surprise of these people. They couldn't do this militarily. The Philistines were stronger. But God did it, and He brought Himself, this representation, this Ark of the Covenant, the one that represents the very presence of God, God brought it back into Israel by grace. It's just undeserved favor for Israel. Here they come. Israel's holy ark, the ark of their God, is now rolling right back into the promised land. Verse 14 says, the cart came into the field. What is Israel? How is Israel going to deal with this cart, or with the Ark of the Covenant? The cart came into the field of Yeshua the Beth Shemite and stood there where there was a large stone. So God has the cows go to a precise spot and stop, and this stone He would make a memorial to Himself. It says the cows stood there where there was a large stone. And what do the priests, the Levites in the city of Beit Shemesh do? It says they split the wood of the cart. This brand new cart, they tore it up so they could make a fire. They split the wood of the cart and they offered the cows as a burnt offering to the Lord. They were so happy to see the ark that they took the wood of the cart, they made fire of it, and they offered the two cows, these two milk cows, as a burnt offering to Yahweh. Verse 15 says, the Levites, because this is a Levite town, the Levites took down the ark of the Lord and the box that was with it, in which were the articles of gold, and they put them on the large stone. So you can imagine this flat stone, and the Ark of the Covenant of Yahweh is there, and this little box that they sent with them is there. They put them on the large stone. And the men of Beit Shemesh offered burnt offerings and sacrifices that day to the Lord. How do you think the Levites took down the Ark of the Lord? The proper way, with the poles and the blue and the porpoise covering and the blue covering. Where was all that stuff? Where was all that stuff? Well, the last anybody had seen it, it was in the Battle of Aphek. They carried this ark. Maybe they carried it properly, maybe they didn't, but it was either at the tabernacle still, the poles and the coverings, or they were lost in the Battle of Aphek. They certainly weren't with the ark. Grace. Mercy. God allows these Levites to take the Ark of the Covenant, to get it off of the cart, because He knows they're going to worship Him by offering burnt offerings with the wood of the cart and the cows. It's grace. He does not strike them down for this. Very interesting, the way God chooses on whom to have mercy and when to show mercy. God does this all His own. In verse 16 it says, when the 5 lords of the Philistines saw it, because remember they were told to follow the cows and see whether Yahweh did all this to us or not. It says when the 5 lords of the Philistines saw it, everything that was going on, the cows walk straight back, the Jews are rejoicing, they tear up the cart and burn it, and they offer the cows as a burnt offering. When they saw all these things, they returned to Ekron that day. What didn't they do? They didn't fall down and worship Yahweh. All it says is that they saw it. They saw the path of the cows. They saw exactly what occurred. They knew that Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, was the direct cause of Dagon falling down in his temple. They knew that Yahweh, the God of the Hebrews, was the cause of their sores, their hemorrhoids and other things, their madness. They knew this. But yet, instead of dropping down and worship Him, all they do is turn around and go home. They return to Ekron. Just like the Pharaoh and the Egyptians didn't turn to Yahweh to worship Him after the plagues. They just wanted Israel gone. We know that because a day after Israel left, Pharaoh and the Egyptians changed their minds and said, what is this we have done? We've let Israel go. We need to go get them and bring them back so they can be our slaves. And then you get the drowning at the Red Sea of the Egyptian army. Nobody bowed down to Yahweh. All they did was see it, the Philistines, all they did was see it and leave, although they knew for certain that Yahweh, the God of Abraham and Isaac and Jacob, the Hebrew God, He was in control, stronger than Dagon, the one that struck them with these tumors and the madness. They knew it, but they refused to bow down to Him in worship. They just wanted to leave him and go back home. Verse 17 says, "These are the golden tumors which the Philistines returned for a guilt offering to Yahweh, one for Ashdod." Remember, there were 5 major cities. Here they are. One for Ashdod, one for Gaza, one for Ashkelon, one for Gath, and one for Ekron. And the golden mice, according to the number of all the cities of the Philistines, belonging to the 5 lords, both of fortified cities and of country villages. And then it says something interesting. This large stone that God had the animals stop at, it says the large stone on which they set the ark of Yahweh is a witness to this day in the field of Yehoshua, the Beit Shemite. It's a memorial. It's a memorial. It's a statue, if you will. It's a place where they can go and remember what God had done in bringing his ark back into the land of Israel. And if you stop there, you would think everything is better. The ark is back in the proper land. Someone will come and get the ark and take it to the tabernacle and put it back in the Holy of Holies. That does not occur because it doesn't stand anymore. Clearly, the city of Shiloh has been at least partially destroyed, because that's not what they do with this ark, even though they know that's where it belongs. So everything looks like it's all right until you get to the very next verse and you see that these Levites, these priests, desecrate the Ark of the Covenant. They don't treat it as holy. They desecrate it even though they know better. Verse 19, it says, God struck down some of the men of Beit Shemesh. Why? Why would he do that? Because they had looked into the ark of the Lord. He struck down of all the people 50,070 men. This is almost double that died in the battle with the Philistines 7 months earlier. He struck down 50,070 men, and the people mourned because the Lord had struck the people with the great slaughter. You think, wait a minute, why is Yahweh killing the Jews, but yet when the Philistines touched the ark, he didn't do anything to them? In verse 20 it says, the men of Beit Shemesh said, who is able to stand before Yahweh? Who can be in his presence? Who is able to stand before Yahweh, this holy God, and to whom shall he go up from us? See, they didn't know where to take the temple, the ark. They didn't know to what people, to what group of people. We are Levites, and if we can't be in the presence of the Lord, who can? Where are we supposed to send this? The tabernacle clearly doesn't stand, or else they would have immediately sent it back to Shiloh to put it in the Holy of Holies. Why did Yahweh kill so many in Beit Shemesh? For looking into the ark. And why did God spare the Philistines when they lifted this ark up and put it on the cart? What's the difference between the men of Philistia and these Levites who know the Mosaic law? I'll give you just a couple of reasons, a couple of thoughts. Number one is, to whom much is given, much is expected. And the Jews knew better. Certainly the Levites knew better than to desecrate this temple or this ark and peel back the mercy seat on which God resides, the dwelling place of God on earth, the mercy seat, to touch the mercy seat, to lift the lid with the cherubim off and to look inside the box. Doesn't matter what they were looking for. Maybe they were looking to see if the tablets of the law were still in there. Who cares if they're in there? God said, touch the box and die. God said, look at the box and die. That's why they covered it. And here you have these Levites that should know better, that do know better, not only touching the box, but looking inside it to see what's in it. And God wouldn't stand for it. To whom much is given, the responsibility of being the priest in Israel, much is expected from those priests. And number two, God will be merciful to whom he will be merciful. The fact that he gave the Philistines a break on this day, God knew what he was doing, moving the ark back into the promised land. That was his desire, that was his will, that the ark be back in Jewish land. So he was merciful to the Philistines, who did not know any better They didn't know how to move this. Even if they would have known, they didn't have any Levite priests. They didn't have the poles. They didn't have the coverings. Even if they wanted to do it right, they didn't have what it took to do it right. So God showed mercy. And God does that. God can choose to whom to be merciful and to whom to show no mercy. That's a prerogative only of the living God. The ark should have been in the Holy of Holies, in the tabernacle, and the Levites knew it. They knew that this ark shouldn't be in a common city, even a city that belonged to the Levites. It belonged in the tabernacle. That's the only place for this piece of furniture. They wanted to see or send the ark in the presence of Yahweh away from them. To whom shall we send it? Where can we get this thing away from us? Not even the Jewish Levites want to be in the presence of the ark. 50,000 of them have died. But they want to send it back for a different reason than the Philistines wanted it gone. The Philistines wanted to get rid of the ark because of everything Yahweh was bringing on them, the catastrophes. The Levites properly consider this ark the holy relic that it is, and realize that we are people of unclean lips. We are unholy. We can't be in the presence of this ark. They say, who is able to stand before Yahweh, this holy God? They know that the ark represents the presence of God, and they can't stand there. They can't be in His presence, not even the Levites. So they want the ark gone also. And in verse 21, it says, so they sent messengers to the inhabitants of Kiriath Yearim. Interesting. And this is what the Levites said to the men of Kiriath Yearim. The Philistines have brought back the ark of Yahweh. Come down and take it up to you. The interesting thing is that the city of Kiriath Yearim, where they want to send the ark, is not a Levitical city. It's not a priestly city. It's not one of the cities that God gave the priests. The priests want the ark gone, and they send it to a common city of Israel, this city Kiriath Yearim. And they put it into the custody, not of a priest. Nowhere in the Bible does it say the two men that we're about to see in chapter 7, a man called Abimelech, not Abimelech, what's his name? Let me read the verse. Abinadab. And his son is named Eleazar. Nowhere in the Bible does it say that these people were priests, that they were Levites. These appear, by all intents and purposes, these two men appear to be common Jews. Just common Jews, like you and me, just common people. The priests have given the ark, the custody of the ark of the covenant. The priests, the Levites, have given the custody of the ark of the covenant away from the priesthood and into the hands of the common Jew. An astounding event. And these two worshipful Jews will hold on to that ark for a long, long time. In chapter 7, let me give you some what we're going to see in chapter 7. The ark will stay with this man, Abinadab. My God is loyal, or my father is loyal, is what it named, or noble. My father is noble, is what his name means. Av is the word for father, Abba. But what we'll see is the ark will stay with this man, Abinadab, in Kiriath Yearim for many years. We're going to see Samuel lead the people back. Samuel was a judge, remember. And Samuel will lead the people back to a national repentance, to a restoration of their relationship with Yahweh. Remember, we are leading. I gotta go up a few 1,000 feet in elevation and give you this big picture again. In 1 Samuel chapter 8, the Jews will reject Yahweh as being their king. We are moving toward the greatest rejection of Yahweh to date, when Israel will say, we don't want you, Yahweh, to be our king. We want a human king. We no longer want judges like Samuel and Gideon and Jephthah and all these. We want a human king who will lead us. We're moving toward the rejection, so that what you see even in the Levitical priesthood, this spiritual disunity, they don't know what they're doing when they get the ark. They look inside it instead of revering it. Israel is just in a spiritual disaster, in spiritual shambles as we move toward 1 Samuel chapter 8. So, but for a brief time, Samuel will lead the people back to Yahweh in national repentance. Israel will defeat the Philistines, and the Philistines will remain defeated all the days that Samuel lives. And Samuel, at the end of the chapter, will set up a stone of remembrance. He'll call it Ebenezer, a stone of help. Before we go any further, I know I'm running out of time. Remember the 5 cycles of the book of Judges. I just want to tell you these. At least 4 cycles. Remember, Israel would be living in harmony with Yahweh. They'd be worshiping Him properly. But then they turned to idolatry. They started worshiping all the false gods, Baal, Asherah, and all that mess. And God would, because of their idolatry, send a Gentile nation, a pagan nation, to inflict pain in Israel. And then the next cycle is Israel. The people would cry out to God, "Save us, God, this is horrible." And what would God do? He would hear the cry of His people Israel, and He would raise up a judge, and that judge would lead Israel into battle and would cast off the Canaanite oppressors, and Israel would again live in relationship with Yahweh. And that cycle, that circle goes on many, many times in Israel. It happens in the life of Samuel. When Israel gets the ark back, they are in idolatry. They're not worshiping the ark properly. And Samuel will lead them back to God. And at a time when Israel, in chapter 7, by the end of it next week, you'll say, why in the world did Israel want a human king after everything that God showed them through this wonderful man, Samuel? Why in the world did they reject Samuel and reject Yahweh as being king? Because it worked perfectly under Samuel. One more slide and we'll close. The next several chapters make up the third major part of 1 Samuel. This is what we'll see in the next few chapters. Where in this next chapter, chapter 7, we'll see Samuel as the judge of Israel. From chapter 7:2 to chapter 7, verse 17. In the next chapter, in chapter 8, all the way to chapter 12, we will see Israel reject Yahweh as king, demand a human king. God will give them Saul to be the king. So for several chapters, we will see the kingship given to Saul. Almost immediately, we'll see Saul, a disaster of a spiritual life. We'll see the kingship taken from Saul and handed to a man named David. David doesn't become king. David is given the right to the kingship whenever God is done with Saul, but the torch is passed nonetheless, and Saul knows it. The kingship is taken from Saul in chapter 13 all the way to chapter 15. So that's the next major section of the book of 1 Samuel that we'll see. The next several chapters have to do with Samuel's judgeship, Saul's kingship, and God stripping the kingship away from Saul. Israel is in a bad, bad place. Let's close in prayer. Father,